Thank you guys for joining me here on the last segment of today's show. Just continuing our series from yesterday that we started it. Some more unanswered questions around the NFL, going through each division and pointing out the biggest unanswered question that remains for each team and just discussing it and how, they could address it going forward. Not just in 2024, the rest of the year, but also in the future. And that seems to be a theme with a couple of these teams here in this division in particular. But starting off with one of the teams that we saw yesterday, the Washington Commanders, the biggest question remaining for me that's remained unanswered will be, can Cliff Kingsbury do his part in getting this offense back to where we saw them, just like 4 to 5 weeks ago, where their offense was flawless, the running game was exceptional, Jaden Daniels, was in there in the MVP conversations. Can Cliff Kingsbury do his part to get this offense back and help his rookie quarterback as much as possible? Because we talked about their offensive struggles and Daniels, kind of slowing down right in his first year. And we talked about the losses against 3 of the top defenses in the NFL in Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia. So maybe in this offense now where we've hit like a rough spot where things aren't flowing as naturally. Terry McLaurin being their best receiver, their best weapon on offense. I know it's hard to get him the ball. I know everyone's focused on taking him away, but how about we just try and get him the ball a lot earlier? I know you want to establish the run, and this might be the only time I ever say anything like this because of how emphatic I've been about starting with the running game. This might be one of the only times where I'm thinking, if Terry's really your one X factor type of guy, why not try and get him the ball quick, early, and often, right? Screen passes, maybe jet sweeps or anything like that. Just quick out routes, hitch routes, things like that to get him the ball early, get him going earlier, kind of put the defense on notice. I think it'll go a long way, and that's only the beginning of it, right? He's too good and he's too important to have a night like he did last night. And all the credit to the Eagles, but you got to get him the ball. You got to get him the ball a lot, in my opinion, right? No one's coming to help. You're not going to bring in another receiver, obviously, right? This is all you've got, so you have to try and get him the ball as quickly as possible. And then on sort of a similar sort of point, get Jaden Daniels going a little bit earlier. Running ability. I know you don't want to necessarily have him run like 15 times a game, but use his legs a little bit more often, more design runs, more RPOs and things like that. Try to get that involved a little bit more, move the pocket as well to keep the defense off balance a little bit more. I think it's become a bit too stagnant over the last couple of weeks, and like I said, I like them prioritizing the running game, but I think it's just been a tad overdone a little bit, especially last game, because I saw a bunch of plays where every single play was just a handoff. And I'm thinking, all right, are they going to sprinkle in something here, like a little play action? Are they just going to pass it or just try and run the ball all night? You can't be one-dimensional. You got to sequence it a little bit. So it shouldn't make their offense, passing-wise, inept. They're too good. Jaden Daniels is too good, too accurate to be one-dimensional. So Cliff Kingsbury, has a lot of work to do to try and get this offense humming again and finding new creative ways to get this offense going again. So that's really what I'm waiting to see, hopefully answered for me going forward. Then getting to the Eagles as well. For me, again, can they address their slow starts to the year? Are we going to see them address it, get better from constantly? It feels like every game they start losing or they start by putting up like 3 or 7 points or not double digit points in the first half. It always seems like it's just a one digit sort of scoreline for them in the first half. And last night, despite the win, Philadelphia continued its bad start to games. They didn't get a point until there was 19 seconds left in the first half. And although Jake Elliott did miss a couple field goals that he should make, it's happened all year. It's not just yesterday where it's this sort of like fluke scenario, right? It's happened all year where this team if they fall behind and teams jump on top of them and get out in front of them by a couple scores, then they become one dimensional. Jalen Hurts tries to get them back in the game. He overdoes it, or really the offense overdoes it passing wise, chasing the game from that point on, and it usually leads to turnovers. The last time we saw a team take advantage of it, quite honestly, was the Bucks. The Bucks was the last team that really took advantage of it, and the Eagles have gone better on the defensive side of the ball, certainly, but I think it's still kind of rearing its ugly head a little bit here and there. I just don't think anyone's really taken advantage of it. And does that have to do with the level of opponents they've played? Maybe, but it was there yesterday for the Commanders. I thought they just didn't take advantage of it. For an Eagles team to put up 3 points in the first half, for the talent that they have, you got to take advantage of it, or their talent is eventually gonna click and wake up, right? And they're gonna beat you by what was it, 8 points last night. So you got to take advantage of it. Looking at it all year in how bad they've scored 30 points on 24 total drives that have started in the first quarter, and the only team to be worse than that and have fewer points than the Eagles in that category is the Chicago Bears. They're down there with the Bears, and that's nowhere you want to be if you have Super Bowl aspirations, if you have the personnel to go out and win the Super Bowl, right? You don't want to be in that category, especially, starting games off slow. You can't really do that and just have comeback victories all throughout the playoffs. It's not going to work. It's not sustainable. So that is something that they have to get over. I'm not saying they're getting just bailed out by being very good and talented, but it certainly helps, right, in situations like this. But they need to start faster and start getting out in front of these other teams, because it'll be less stressful, obviously, but it'll lead to just easier games. Every game feels like it's a little bit harder for them in some regards. So getting out to quicker starts will be something that I hope the Eagles can answer going forward. Then the two other teams, right? This is where we draw the line for long-term and short-term unanswered questions, because the Giants have a long-term question that still remains unanswered. What's the plan for them for their new quarterback? Because I think Daniel Jones' time in New York is over unofficially. I expect the Giants to announce his benching next week, either Monday or Tuesday after their bye week, and to try and avoid the injury guarantee that would come if he does get injured the rest of 2024 or at some point in 2024. His salary next year is guaranteed. So to avoid that, I think they're just going to bench him. I expect it to happen. So now looking ahead, with a projected top 3 pick at this moment, they need to get 2025 roster, their game plan, their blueprint for what they want this team to be in order. I'm not saying they have to start planning for that next week, but you have to make sure you get your cards right. Honestly, because you try to restart with Daniel Jones, the draft pick, whatever, it was way too early, like everybody said, and they surprised everybody by drafting him 6 overall, and that already was a surprise, and you failed catastrophically at that. Daniel Jones' fault, but also the organization's part, mostly for the drafting, the scouting of a player, for really not helping him out too much in the beginning. Then once they did, it was just not really there. So you got to get this next opportunity to have such a high draft pick, even higher than what you had this year, and probably when you drafted Daniel Jones. These opportunities don't just come, every other year, unless you're really bad. And I don't think the Giants are really, really bad. They got good players on their team. So if you're going to have a high draft pick like this and it's gone really bad for you this year, you have to take advantage of it, right? You can't be in a situation like Chicago where things go bad. You don't do enough work from obviously the player standpoint, right? But of course the coaching standpoint and the right coordinator and things like that. You have to get every single thing, and you have to account for every single thing when we're talking about such a huge investment like it is drafting a quarterback so high. And you look at Chicago, and then you look at Washington and Denver and even New England and how they've done it. They've sort of provided a little outline for you. So how much can you take from them and try to address this problem going forward? They have a lot of decisions to make. in terms of who you add, who you re-sign, and things like that? Do you address the offensive line? Do you draft another wide receiver? Do you bring in another tight end and things like this? All these things that they have to address on top of adding, to Malik Neighbors, obviously very good. Dexter Lawrence, very good. Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau. They got good players. The quarterback is obviously the main piece of it all. So trying to figure that out and get that right is the most important part. So that's what I'd like to see them answer going forward. And lastly, the Dallas Cowboys. An unanswered question for me that will decide a lot for them going forward is how quickly they decide to extend Micah Parsons, or in a catastrophic alternate universe somewhere, do they not extend them, right? They're going to extend them, I feel like, but there's a universe out there where they don't. So in this universe, in reality, how quickly can they extend them, right? They still have him for his 5th-year option next year before he is a free agent in 2026. So will we see a repeat of their latest mistake, right? With waiting so long for CeeDee Lamb, waiting so long with Dak Prescott. Are they going to wait to the absolute last minute on his 5th year and maybe pay a higher price, or are they going to do it this offseason? But with that, where the Cowboys are right now, they need a lot of help. So paying Micah Parsons a lot of money earlier is what you'd think you'd want them to do, but they still have a lot of other spots that they need to address. So do you kind of hold off this time and address the other parts and then wait for Micah Parsons later next year maybe? That's a debate that they're going to have. And if you do extend Micah, like I think most people expect them to, you have the highest paid edge rusher, the highest paid receiver, and the highest paid quarterback all on your team. Is that something that spells out a winning formula, a championship level formula? I don't think so, but it's hard when you have 3 of these guys, where they are in their careers right now, all deserving money like this. But I don't know if it's particularly smart for the Cowboys to do this. I feel like they're going to anyway, but they have a lot of the other positions to address, and that question, how quickly they do it, I think will be very telling for how quickly they return to relevancy, or how much deeper they get into the hole that they've dug themselves into regarding contracts, the makeup of this team. That's going to be a huge question, probably the biggest question of this upcoming offseason. So it is something that we're going to keep track of, obviously, but that is the last thing we'll cover on today's show. Thank you guys for joining me. Please remember to like, follow, and subscribe to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast, as well as following the network on all forms of social media. If you want to see more of the show, check out the Podcast Network channel and the Sports Network channel on YouTube for more coverage around the NFL with me, Manny Maradiaga, as your host. Remember to join me each and every weekday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, where we talk more about the NFL, breaking news, discussions, and everything to do with the NFL. So I hope you guys have a great weekend. Go out, watch the games this weekend. Go out and watch the Jake Paul fight tonight. That should be interesting. And come back on Monday and we'll talk about all that stuff. So I'll see you guys on Monday. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you guys next week. Let's
go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet. Damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to